We all have a family history, right? But what if it wasn't just a bunch of names on a tree? What if it was actually a guide, a roadmap for your own life? That's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to look at how one family, the Wonju clan, figured out how to unlock the wisdom of their ancestors. And hey, maybe we can learn how to do the same.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. What if you could actually talk to your ancestors? What would you ask them? What would they tell you about their biggest wins, their toughest moments, all the stuff that made them who they were? But for most of us, right, that feels like science fiction. There's this huge gap of time that just seems impossible to cross. And this is the big problem, isn't it? The stories are there, they exist, but they're basically locked away in a vault. We're talking about records written in these super complex ancient scripts like Hanja, and in a style of language that nobody speaks anymore. So they're not just old papers. They're like these intricate historical puzzles that, let's be honest, feel totally impossible to solve. Okay, but what if someone just handed you the key to that vault? That's pretty much what author Byun did for his family. He took on this absolutely massive project, translating his family's epic history. We're talking about the official inscription of the Duke Jeonseo faction of the Wonju clan. And his whole point wasn't just to swap out old words for new ones. No, his mission was to build a bridge across the centuries. All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to explore this one family's incredible history, because by seeing how they piece their story together, we might just find a blueprint for understanding our own. And you can see his mission right from the get-go. He says, "I have done my best to use clear and accessible language." And what he's really saying is, look, this isn't supposed to be some dusty old book that just sits on a shelf looking important. The whole point is to turn this history into something alive, something you can actually use. He wanted to make the stories of his ancestors so clear that they become real, practical tools for living your life today. Okay, so where does this epic story begin? Well, it all starts with a man named Suk. And talk about being born at the right or wrong time. He lived right through this massive turning point in Korean history, the fall of one dynasty, Goryeo, and the rise of another, the Joseon dynasty, way back in the late 1300s. I mean, his entire life was shaped by this incredible political chaos, which really set the stage for everything that came after. So let's just zoom out for a second and appreciate the scale here. We're talking about 450 years. For 15 generations, the Byun family's story is completely intertwined with the history of the entire Joseon dynasty. Their lives aren't just little personal stories. They're like a mirror reflecting the history of a whole nation. And this is where things get really interesting, because it shows us that history is all about perspective. Let's go back to the founder Suk. From the Goryeo point of view, the old dynasty, he was a total hero, a loyal servant. But from the perspective of the new Joseon dynasty, well, they saw him as a man who just couldn't get with the times. So what was he? A hero? Or just an old relic? The answer completely depends on who you ask. And man, this was not an easy ride. We're talking about a story of pure survival. You can see here they went through just devastating wars and invasions. And then, in the 1600s, these horrible famines where millions of people died. So their story isn't just a simple line of names on a chart, it's a testament to what it means to be truly resilient. So that brings us to the next big challenge, right? For their descendants, looking back at all this. I mean, it's a lot. You've got drama, you've got these conflicting stories, you've got immense hardship. So how do you even begin to make sense of it all? How do you find the real story without getting completely tangled up in the details? Well, luckily for us, the author doesn't just leave us hanging. He actually gives us a guide, a set of keys for unlocking the past. And honestly, this might be the most important takeaway from his whole project. It really boils down to 3 key ideas. First, and this one's huge, you have to judge history by the standards of its time, not ours. You can't apply our 21st century morals to something that happened 500 years ago. Second, you got to remember that records are selective. History is written by the winners, right? So you always have to ask, what's been left out? Whose story isn't being told? And third, and this is the really powerful one, you need to look for the universal human values that are hiding behind customs that might seem really strange to us. Okay, so let's dig into that third point with an example that is, well, it's pretty shocking to our modern minds. The records talk a lot about this concept of filial piety, which is basically this intense devotion to your parents. And one way they showed this, well, it's an act that sounds completely bizarre and frankly unscientific to us today. It's really easy to just hear it and write it off as primitive. But this is exactly what the author is telling us to do. Look deeper. Don't focus on the act itself. Focus on the why. The specific action might seem totally alien to us, but the feeling behind it, that intense love and desperation you feel when a parent is sick, that's something we can all understand. It's a universal human value, just expressed in a way that fit their culture and their time.
So, okay, we've got these tools, we understand the perspective. Now, what do we do with it? How do we actually take these lessons from the past and weave them into our own lives, into our future? This is the real payoff. When you look past those unfamiliar customs, you start to see these timeless lessons pop out. Things like the importance of family sticking together, of being humble and thinking about other people, the value of honesty and trust, how to have respectful relationships. The author's whole point is that these aren't just some old-fashioned ideas. They are a literal toolkit for building a good life, no matter what century you live in. And this quote right here just sums up his whole philosophy so perfectly. He says, "I sincerely wish this book to be more than just a decorative object." He's saying, please don't let this just collect dust on a shelf. He wants it to be a living, breathing guide that gets passed down, shared, and used by everyone, a tool that truly connects the past with the future. So that really leaves us with one final thought. When we learn how to read our own history with this kind of understanding, with this kind of empathy, we're not just digging up old facts, we're unlocking actual wisdom. So the big question for you is, what story from your past is just waiting for you to find it and weave it into your future?